This video is sponsored by Busuu. Ready to start learning that language you've always wanted to know? Sign up at the link in the description and try Busuu Premium for free for 7 days. Once upon a time, I closely guarded my secret to high levels of fluency in learning languages. But then someone smashed open that piggy bank of treasures, and now the word is out. Who is this Prometheus who is about to hand over to you the secret of fire? Let's find out together. I'm Luke, and this is polýMATHY. If you've been a follower of this channel and a fan of my other channel, Scorpio Martianus, where I make content exclusively in Latin and Ancient Greek, you'll know that this book here, Familia Romana, the first part of the Lingua Latina per se Illustrata series, is what I believe to be the best pedagogical instrument ever devised for learning languages, and certainly the best way to learn Latin, the best way to learn to be a fluent reader of Latin. A brilliantly constructed graded reader, its key features are a continuous narrative that starts with an introduction to the characters and follows these characters through a lovely story, each chapter building on the grammar and vocabulary of what came before. The story itself has a lot of charm and compels the reader to continue learning. And the best part? No English. No other language at all except for Latin. And it's just that well engineered that you learn all that you need to know about the grammar and vocabulary through marginal notes and pictures, all the way up until poetry, even poetry actually. By the end of the book, the student becomes a fluent reader of Latin. And as you probably know, I have dramatic readings of every chapter on my other channel, Scorpio Martianus. If only there existed books like this for modern languages. Guess what? They do exist. The Familia Romana book was actually composed simultaneously with other nature method books for Italian, French, and English, written by a team led by Arthur Jensen in the 1960s. And that's where the Ayan Academy YouTube channel swept in and stole one of my best kept secrets. It took the books and it popularized them by making audiobooks for all of them. That's right, you can listen to every single chapter and learn to be a fluent reader of English, if you're not already a fluent reader of English, not a native speaker, as well as, of course, French and Italian. And I'll be concentrating on the French and Italian in this video.
Monsieur Duclos est un homme. Madame Duclos est une femme. Jean est un garçon. Et Henri est un garçon.
All three books take you to reading fluency in that language, just as Familia Romana in Latin.
Mentre andavano a San Pietro, Vespucci aveva chiesto di andarci a piedi lungo il Tevere.
And because they're all audiobooks and you can see all the text scrolling by as you hear it, it's a wonderfully passive tool. It's like being read to as a child.
At lunch the next day, they discussed the buildings they had seen in London.
I think there's so much utility in this method because they use these narratives about these families and these characters to take you from nothing to complete fluency with just marginal notes, just pictures, just context. And something I particularly like about them is that they have the International Phonetic Alphabet, a modified version of it, of IPA, under each line. Now, why is this important? English and French are somewhat notorious for not being written phonetically, but Italian is thought to be a language that has a spelling system which conforms almost entirely with the spoken language. But there are so many important particularities about Italian pronunciation which are not visible in the normal writing system, but are indicated here in this book. And they're utterly essential to being a good speaker of the language. And later in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how these videos do that and why you should subscribe to Ayan Academy. And since these three books are all recited by native speakers, you can use my extensive reading technique, which is in this video here. You can use my extensive reading technique to reduce your foreign accent and to gain inflection and cadence more like that of a native speaker. Check out this video of mine for more. And even if you don't use my extensive reading method, just listening to these, just reading along is an outstanding way to gain the passive skills of listening and reading. But there are 4 language learning disciplines. Listening and reading are the passive ones. The active ones are speaking and writing. When it comes to comprehensible input methods, it's well established that, especially in the beginning when learning a language, one of the most important things to do is to get input, to get listening input, and to get reading input. And that speaking and writing come later as a consequence of that input, which is why Ayan Academy is giving the most important foundation for you by giving you the listening and reading skills that you need. But to be able to speak and write in a language, we have to be able to speak and write in a language. That's a tautology. Remind me to make a video about tautologies. So obviously, certainly for the modern languages, you can interact with native speakers. That's a fantastic way to, of course, get that practice in using the languages actively. Except for the fact that it can be intimidating to use the language that you are trying to study and trying to learn with a native speaker for all kinds of reasons. One, you might feel that, oh, I'm shy and I can't form the things right, and you also want to get feedback from them. You want to know how to improve. But if you do that, you're going to be interrupting yourself, and then you might interrupt the conversation, and it can be very uncomfortable. And even for someone like me who appears to be fearless, it can be intimidating, even for a language I know really well, like Italian, to get that kind of improvement. So what's the solution? Since you have to interact with native speakers, such as in a structured classroom or on the street, how do you get an opportunity to practice in a targeted way without feeling that kind of pressure? And that's where Busuu comes in, because you can do exercises that are written and spoken and get feedback from native speakers. And that feedback will come in the form of written or audio messages from other people in the community who also use the app. Now, I've been really skeptical of language learning apps in the past. I like the old school stuff, like what Ayan Academy is doing, basically an audiobook, using the modern technology of YouTube, as I have on Scorpio Martianus, to create these audiobooks, and you see the text rolling by. But fundamentally, it's really old school, and I love that, and absolutely, that stuff works really well. So I've thought, oh, well, a language learning app. But I was so impressed by this, I actually want to talk in detail about the pedagogical features of this app, Busuu, and why I think they're so valuable. Despite the fact that, of course, this video is sponsored by Busuu, I do think that these are interesting topics in the field of pedagogy. And the fact that you can get feedback in a completely unintimidating way is truly amazing. Because if you have a teacher, you have to ask the teacher for help, or the teacher has to correct you, and most people can deal with that. Or if you're dealing with native speakers, maybe the native speaker will correct you, or maybe not. And in any case, it's never super comfortable. But with this, you will do exercises at the end of each lesson in Busuu, and they'll be written or they'll be spoken. You get to choose one or the other. And then people from the community will listen to you, or they will read what you have written, and they will give you the feedback you need to correct. And that dramatically lowers the anxiety level. There's something in language learning known as the affective filter, because affect is feeling. And if you feel intimidated or uncomfortable, it's going to be so hard to put the language into actual practical use. But by reducing the anxiety in this way, you get the vital feedback you need to improve. And then with that, you can go further in your language learning progress. So like I was saying before about input, we need input in the beginning. That A1, A2 elementary level especially, we need to get huge amounts of listening and reading input. And also through B1 and B2, primarily input. And we're not doing a lot of output yet. But we need just a little bit here and there. So if you use something like Ayan Academy, which I'm strongly recommending that you subscribe and listen if you're interested in these languages that are offered on Ayan Academy, subscribe, listen, let me know how you like them. But to get that extra bit of practice, that little bit of targeted output, that's what Busuu is for. And then once you complete a Busuu course, you can go on to more advanced things, and you can do it as a confident speaker at the intermediate level. Because Busuu lets you choose the program you want to do, whether it's more professional or more casually based, or what's even better, whether it's A1, A2, B1, or B2, and no, those aren't hot sauces. The common European framework of reference for learning languages. Remind me to make a video about that because it's interesting. There are essentially 6 levels. A1 and A2 are the elementary, B1, B2 are intermediate, and C1 and C2 are advanced. Generally, we say that if you complete successfully B2, so if you could take an exam for B2 for whatever language, then you have basic fluency in that language. And all of the Busuu courses in all of the languages they offer take you to B2. And not only can you choose these levels, you can set a study plan. So if I want to study 10, 20, or 30 minutes a day, or however many days a week, I will know on what date I will achieve basic fluency in the language I'm working with. So I can keep to that plan, or I can study more than that every day. Or if I go less, then I'll know that it won't be in April when I finish all of the materials for French. And that's extraordinary. I've never seen anything like that. I think that's just such a great feature. And each of these levels for A1, A2, B1, B2 on Busuu have exams you can take. Now, once upon a time, I was actually fluent in French, but I haven't studied French actively for 4 years, but I was at the C1 level, according to the instructors I was working with at the time. So I decided, okay, well, instead of doing all this core stuff for Busuu, let me go right to the exam and see what it's like and how I do. And I passed, but barely. What this told me was a lot. Okay, so in 4 years, I haven't studied French actively. I've lost some ability, which makes sense, so I need to regain that ability. But there's also gaps in my knowledge. Stuff, vocabulary, expressions that I should know if I'm at the B2 level, but I just never had the opportunity to use. So that's why I really think Busuu is a great program, because it's going to fill in all of those gaps and give the basic introduction, or familiarity at least, to things that you need to have basic fluency to interact in the language. So that really impressed me. And you have to wait 2 weeks to take one of these exams again. So what I've been doing is I've been recompleting the whole course. And now that I know that Busuu isn't just some fluffy furufafa app that's only going to teach me baguette and ananas and jacusto.
J'arrête de papier, baguette. Baguette.
I really am excited about going through every single lesson, finding the things that I haven't learned well yet, learning them, mastering them, doing every one of the exams, and trying to get a perfect score if I can, because that way I'll know that I absolutely have the foundation that I thought I had. And you don't have to do every lesson. For Italian, for example, I've been skipping around, trying to find things in areas of vocabulary like cleaning the bathroom. Like, I didn't know some of the terms in there, and that was so useful. Since I'm living in Italy, I want to know the words for everything. I'm a fluent Italian speaker. How do I not know some of these terms, I think, when I find them? So that's why it's so great. And I feel really, really happy that I've been able to learn so many tiny things, but important things. Things that you would want to know, like how to say the different departments in a grocery store. That's essential knowledge, and I'm going to get it finally. There was nothing preventing me from getting that, but when you are thinking of a language that you know or know well, there's an infinity of things you could learn. But to really have this structured stuff to know that, this stuff is considered to be at a level lower than my actual ability purported, and yet I have these gaps, well, it makes me really concentrate on the fact that I need to study these things and learn them, which is great, and I have the course to do that now. So I recommend doing that 7-day free trial, and when you do it, let me know if you found it effective in the comments of this video. I'm sincerely interested because I really think it's a decent program, and probably is for most people. In addition to that, try it for a language that you might know well. Try it for Italian or French, and also use Ayan Academy at the same time, because I want to know how those work for you in conjunction. So try a language you maybe have studied before and maybe know reasonably well, but also try one of those harder or stranger languages like Polish or Turkish or Chinese. Because I've done both, the languages that I know well and I don't know well or haven't ever studied, and I find it to be a really effective experience. I'm curious to see how you feel about it as well. The Busuu courses contain a lot of audio, and not only do you have the opportunity to actually do exercises that get corrected by native speakers, there is language recognition software in the app. So there are exercises like "Dove è il bagno?" and you have to actually repeat that into the machine, and if you don't pronounce it right, it will make you do it again. That's a great way to get feedback, because pronunciation is really important. In fact, Davide Gemello on his channel Podcast Italiano just released a video that I took part in. We recorded it a few months ago, but with a group of YouTubers who all of us are super enthusiastic about languages. We all talk about why we think learning a decent level of pronunciation, if not a good level of pronunciation, is so important in our target languages. And a way to get a really technically proficient understanding of the pronunciation details of these languages, I really think you should go and see what there is on Ayan Academy, because underneath every line, like I was saying before, there is a modified version of the International Phonetic Alphabet showing you exactly how these languages work. And take a language like Italian, where you actually think that, oh, well, this is a phonetically spelled language. It should be perfectly clear. Well, there's so much stuff that's not. Let's take a look. This page has some of that phonetic transcription. The very first word here is e, which means and the word that follows is così, which means thus or like that. But we see in the transcription, there is a doubling of the k sound. It's not è così, but è così. Although, in fact, there are some dialects of Italian where this doesn't happen. But in Standard Italian, it does, and it's known as raddoppiamento fonosintattico. And it happens again in the next little word, which is a, meaning at or towards or for. So the two words a piccoli together are pronounced appiccoli, as if there were two P's there. And this phenomenon occurs normally if there was a long vowel in Latin or if there was a consonant in Latin that was eliminated. The length of the syllable, however, I'm always talking about the most important part about Latin is the length of the vowels and the length of the syllables. Here we see one of those effects actually retained in the phonology of Italian. It's like this wonderful little secret that you want to know about how Italian ought to be pronounced. Like further down, we see a carte. It's not a carte. Another that we can see is that in the word donne, the o is a different kind of o from the one that's in the word poltrona. And this is the vital distinction between opened and closed vowels in Italian. Italian orthography rarely makes this distinction clear. And another is that certain letters or letter combinations in Italian are always long or are always geminated, such as in the word for we will teach, insegneremo. We see that the GN sound, it's nya, but it's always geminated when it falls between vowels. So it's not insegneremo, but insegneremo. These phonetic distinctions are not superficial details, but are truly essential to the language, its grammar, and this book, this series of books, which you can find on Ayan Academy, is a phenomenal way to learn them, because then you can apply that knowledge to any Italian you experience, whether it's through an app like Busuu, whether it's in actual conversation with Italians. And this goes also obviously for the French and English books. In addition to the 3 nature method books for English, French, and Italian that are on Ayan Academy has also found similar books for Spanish and German, and they're working on it for other languages too. So stay subscribed to Ayan Academy because you're going to see a lot of amazing things coming out of that channel in the coming months. And I'd also like to recommend an outstanding channel for learning French, and that's called French for Real, Le Français pour de vrai. And on this channel, Lionel does some extraordinary work. These are wonderful videos for both beginner and intermediate level in order to help improve your listening ability. For Italian, I recommend Podcast Italiano, Elissa, not Elyssa, as well as Sonia Candy. Wonderful channels, and they're part of the group that you see here. Also, Julia has a wonderful channel that you should check out. All those links are, of course, in the description. Thank you so much for subscribing, not just to my channel, but to the channels that I talked about in this video. And thank you so much to all of my Patreon supporters. Au revoir et buon proseguimento.